everyone, my name is Haley Eslick and I'm going to be talking about the reservoir and the signs and symptoms of pertussis today. So the reservoir is humans, and there is no other reservoir that we have found so far, any insects or animals or anything like that. And it's important to note that while children are more susceptible and will more likely develop symptoms of pertussis, adolescents and adults are just as likely to be reservoirs even if they are asymptomatic. So for the signs and symptoms, I put the signs in pink and the symptoms as blue as best as I could. Usually pertussis is presented in 3 separate stages, the first stage being the catarrhal. Catarrh is a word that means an inflammation of the mucous membranes. So that starts with just a low-grade fever, a runny nose, sneezing, and just an occasional cough, not the big deal whooping cough that will be presented later, but just a little dry cough on occasion. So normally at this stage, you would just guess that your child has a cold or maybe a little bit of a flu. And that lasts for about 1 to 2 weeks. And then it'll move on to the second stage, or the paroxysmal stage. Paroxysms are those extended periods of just a coughing attack, and then they draw in that really long, high-pitched whoop that just makes it sound like they aren't getting enough oxygen, which is what's happening. There's just a lot of mucus in there, and they can't get a full breath in, and that's another reason why they'll turn blue during these attacks, is just because they're not getting enough oxygen. And sometimes they'll also vomit either during or right after an attack, just because they cough so hard it makes them gag. And usually those happen just about 15 per day, and they are a little bit more likely at night, but it isn't a huge difference. And obviously, especially if it's a child, they're going to be really distressed during this time because they can't breathe properly, and they will often have an even harder time breathing because they'll start crying and things. And it isn't entirely uncommon for kids to look fairly decent between these attacks. They will have an awful attack and be blue in the face and feel awful, and then they'll get up and keep playing for a while. Not all children will do that, but that is something kind of characteristic of pertussis. And then the third stage would be the recovery stage, and it is generally very gradual, even more so for children than for adults. So for months, they could still have a cough. It'll slowly get better, and they'll have fewer attacks during a day, but it can take a very long time. And sometimes those little coughing attacks will actually recur when they have another respiratory infection. So something that shouldn't be as big of a deal will become a bigger deal because they have had whooping cough in the past. And right there you'll see a graph of how long usually each of these stages last. The big thing to note is just that it does take a very long time. So if your child is sick for an extended period of time, it becomes more and more of a problem, and you're more likely to have pertussis.